I'm Hannah Bardett. I'm in fourth year and I'm studying business management with joint honours in social and public policy.
Fantastic. Now, I know for your dissertation, you're studying menopause in the workplace. So I was wondering what initially attracted you to studying menopause for your undergraduate dissertation?
Well, I actually became interested in it in third year when I was writing a research proposal, and I was sort of talking to my mum about what I could do it on. And we were talking about her experience of menopause just a few days before that, which I find really interesting because she kind of had like a difficult or an uncomfortable experience. And so she gave me a magazine that she'd read on it. And I found a really interesting article, which was coping with the 9 to 5 about menopause at work, which had like some really interesting sort of statistics and how women are the fastest growing segment of the workforce and how there's not really much in place for women experiencing menopause there. And there was one example of a woman who was experiencing like what she called significant brain fog, and how she thought that she was getting early onset dementia. And so some of those like extreme examples of how it can affect you, and I wasn't really aware of that, so I found it really interesting. And once I started sort of researching it, I just wanted to carry it on. So when the chance for writing a dissertation came around, I was really interested to carry on doing research into menopause.
Fantastic. And could you give us a quick overview of what you're looking at in your dissertation?
Yep. So my study is called Talking to Men About Menopause, exploring the perceptions of menopause in the future workforce. And it's sort of just looking at young men's perceptions of menopause, whether they view it as a workplace issue, and what challenges they think they would maybe experience dealing with it as a future manager. So it's an intervention study where I have an initial interview with them, and we sort of talk about what their level of knowledge is and their understandings of menopause. And then the interesting part is they have a conversation with their mums about their experience of menopause or their friends or colleagues' experiences. And they sort of have this discussion. And then I have a final interview with the young men. And we just talk about whether their perceptions have changed, whether they've learned anything new. And I think like in most cases, it's really humanized the experience for them. Obviously, in most cases, it's something they're not really familiar with. So it's been really interesting.
Fantastic. And I know you're in the middle of your study at the moment, but what are some of the interesting or surprising aspects that have emerged in your study so far?
Well, I've actually found it really interesting how educated young men are. So not as much in terms of, I mean, there's still gaps in the knowledge about what the actual experience involves, how long it can last for, etc. But they've all been really aware of the sort of stigma which exists around it, which I found really interesting that they've sort of like clued into that, and they're aware of sort of society's perceptions of older women in general. So it's been really interesting to hear them talk about that, because I wasn't sure that they would have considered those things in the past. Another interesting thing is they've sort of referred to it as a more implicit rather than explicit experience at work. So a lot of comparing it to broken bones and pregnancy and things which are more visible, and they've sort of suggested that it might be more difficult to address because of the fact that it can be difficult to identify, and there's not a sort of straightforward procedure for handling it because the experience can be so subjective. So that's been really interesting.
Fantastic. And I guess these are, because these young men are, I guess, the future managers and possibly leaders of the future in organisations. Do you think it's looking a bit more positive in terms of how they think about menopause at work in general?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, most of them have acknowledged these stigmas, but don't seem to identify with any of them at all, and have like recognised the value in having support policies in place for menopause. So hopefully, if they do become future managers, it's something to consider for them. Most of them have had really interesting takeaways from their conversations with their mothers about how might be the best way to address it in the menopause, what to do and what not to do. And they've all sort of come back being like, I definitely have a better understanding now of how I might approach it, what what I should say and what I shouldn't say. And yeah, I think it's been really interesting for them as well, which I hadn't really anticipated. I thought the engagement might not be as good as it has been. So that's really a positive thing.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for sharing your research and your dissertation, Hannah, and good luck in completing the research.
Thank you.